All right, everybody, welcome back. I am Matt Monty. I'm joined by Drake Sasser. We are doing round number 4 here in Lansing, Michigan of our Pioneer event. So we have not seen Izzet Phoenix yet, but we will this round. So we're going to have Izzet Phoenix, and I believe it's playing against the Rakdos Midrange deck. So we'll get to see a little bit of how that push and pull works and see really what Izzet Phoenix has to offer, post-ban.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. It feels like, first of all, saying Izzet Phoenix is present in the metagame post-banning, I think is already a point of interest, right? This is previously a staple of the Pioneer metagame, or at least in some capacity. Izzet prowess with how Ledger Shredder kind of adapted that archetype may have been taking the lead. But either way, the Izzet expressive iteration decks existed in some capacity or another prior to the banning. It's interesting to see how they're going to adapt post expressive iteration for starters. It looks like they're reaching for things like the full copies of Charter Course and additional copies of Treasure Cruise and stuff like that, especially alongside Ledger Shredder's ability to fill the graveyard. But this matchup in particular is one that existed as well prior to the banning.
Yeah, maybe we can put Scott's deck list up here in a minute. I know we got some things going on. Scott took a quick restroom break real quick, so we'll see. It sounds like we might not be able to get it, but that's okay. Just to kind of see where the deck list landed post-iteration, like you said, maxing out on charter courses. There's other things. There's tons of cantrips to be tried in this archetype. So, and Scott's 3-0, so the deck must still be pretty okay, I guess.
Must still have some legs. No, there's a common adage I think adage is the right word, in the Magic community where when something is banned, the best place to start testing is whatever was banned. That's something that people do a lot in the competitive community, is see if they banned it enough. We saw that happen with Dredge, right? Where there was some banning of some Dredge pieces and Hogak pieces, and those decks remained. And the same concept applies here. If they ban expressive iteration out of the Izzet deck, well, look and see if that banning was enough, and maybe it's not. Maybe with all 4 copies of Treasure Cruise and Temporal Trespass fueled by Ledger Shredder, the deck's still maybe dominant, maybe still one of the best decks, but you don't know until you try it.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's a pretty good statement to make. Is start with what's been banned, and maybe it's just still too good. And we're gonna find out here in just a minute. It sounds like players are shuffling up, getting ready to roll here. And the Pioneer matches we've watched today have been pretty good, I thought. No washes or anything like that. I felt most games have been competitive so far, and that's good. I think it's a good place for the format to start.
Yeah, a lot more interaction we've noticed. I think that was one of the big complaints when you're talking about the Winota Join Our Forces deck, is that deck, it kind of felt like it didn't really do anything until you were down on the spot, right? And that was very frustrating gameplay, at least for me personally, and I think a lot of other players kind of echoed that sentiment, where there's a bunch of just like nonsense creatures that don't really matter, and then a Winota hits the table and suddenly you're dead on the spot to just this huge flurry of permanents that come out of nowhere. Yeah. So as a result, games maybe felt a little less interactive. But with the Rakdos Midrange deck and the Feather deck, and of course, like the Phoenix deck has a lot of back and forth with removal spells and drawing cards, a lot more interaction going on in this this current Pioneer metagame. And I'm pretty interested to see how this goes. We saw a ton of stack interaction between Spirits and Dimir Control.
Yeah, for sure. As we hop down here, we'll get those game wins updated. We are just starting the round, so nobody should have a win quite yet. This format's not that fast. Not that fast yet. So, as you can see, Scott looks like going to take a quick mulligan. Larry is going to join him on the mulligan train, so he's probably going to be down to 6 cards. I would assume, I don't know, I would assume the Izzet Phoenix deck plays better on mulligans than the Rakdos deck, where you need like a bunch of removal spells and Thoughtseize and things like that. But at the same time, mulliganing against a Thoughtseize deck is always a scary proposition.
That's definitely true. And the Phoenix deck, with 4 copies of Treasure Cruise, certainly can unmulligan, if you will, a lot easier, being able to recoup some card advantage that way. But to the Rakdos deck's credit, especially in this matchup, there's a couple like hammers, right, in this matchup. You have things like the Graveyard Trespasser that can really cut down a lot of the graveyard interactions. And like you said, Thoughtseizes that can really kind of help stumble your opponent, even if you're mulliganing somewhat low. And even out of the sideboard, things like Go Blink and stuff like that, the critical mass discard can do a lot to stymie Izzet Phoenix's power, because they get a lot of their card advantage through graveyard interactions. So that's kind of how you can stifle a lot of Izzet Phoenix's potency.
One thing I do find kind of funny about these Izzet Phoenix deck lists right now is, like, at least in Scott's case, there are 4 Arclight Phoenix and there are 4 Ledger Shredders, and that's it. There's no more creatures. That's it. That's what you got. And there's not like a bunch of burn or anything. There's actually 0 burn, I believe. That's it. That's all you got is those 8 cards. So if they get exiled in some way, you're in trouble.
It's true. You actually have a couple Hall of the Storm Giants that you can pair with, the Galvanic Iteration, Temporal Trespass synergy. We've seen that in Standard. Very potent here in Pioneer as well. Big reason why the Phoenix deck saw a lot of play prior to the bannings. Kroxa on turn 2, it looks like. Going to make the Phoenix deck discard a card. Maybe not so good if there's an Arclight Phoenix you want to discard. That's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, no kidding. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, thanks
no
for the
damage
help.
taken. Bird in the yard.
I think those are Riverglide Pathways in the graveyard there. So it's got quite a few lands.
No Thing in the Ice is Ledger Shredder, like you called out, kind of replacing Thing in the Ice, especially with no Winota to be found. Winota is kind of one of those decks that I think Thing in the Ice really performed against. But yeah, it looks like that's the only flip card, so they should be Riverglide Pathways. And here is a Consider after a Ledger Shredder. That'll trigger Connive. I think. Did we do it afterwards? Did we miss Connive? Didn't see what happened. Maybe we discarded a land. Either way, Ledger Shredder, Consider the turn for Scott Pulera. And here's a Graveyard Trespasser. That one's going to go ahead and eat the Phoenix. So, you kind of had a one-turn window to bring it back with that Kroxa. And that probably is why Larry is willing to fire off that Kroxa into that turn 3 Graveyard Trespasser. Get that bird out of here.
Sure. Yeah, Graveyard Trespass is a nice one. It's 3/3 and it actually has Ward also, which makes it pretty difficult to get rid of for a lot of decks, which is
I like this. Galvanic Iteration, Consider, like Trigger Connive. That's a lot of cards that are going to get moved around this turn. It's a lot of power. This really shows the power of Ledger Shredder. I mean, look at this Graveyard Trespasser. It exiled a bird. That's awesome. But as far as graveyard hate goes, I mean, look at how overwhelming Scott's graveyard is becoming just, on casting 2 spells. Ledger Shredder's triggering, Considers throwing cards in the graveyard. Galvanic Iteration is a primary target for the Graveyard Trespasser itself. Just a lot of cards being moved around and really showcasing the power of Ledger Shredder.
Yeah, Scott is one of his 4 treasure cruises away from just overwhelming Larry's, his hand disruption or whatever it is. Like Scott could care less about the Kroxa discarding card.
Yeah, pretty okay. I mean, cards in graveyard help me too. So you got to have some graveyard exile backup, and there is some. Looks like Fiery Impulse discarding an island, going to go ahead and take care of the Graveyard Trespasser. So that one's not going to get to do any more work for Larry Fields. We'll see what his follow up is.
Yeah, I feel like that Ledger Shredder should have counters on it, but we might have missed those. I'm not sure.
Well, obviously, if you discard a land, it doesn't get a counter because that's just the text and Connive. Thoughtseize is going to go ahead and take care of, looks like Scott's last card, which is an opt. Would have been a good one alongside the Galvanic Iteration. Can recoup the cards there. No longer for Scott. Here's the Bloodtithe Harvester you called out earlier. Going to want to grow the Ledger Shredder now for sure before we can get to some kind of a second blood token and trade that Bloodtithe Harvester for the Ledger Shredder, putting Scott on no threats. A lot of big draw steps for Scott, though. Treasure Cruise among some of the best.
Yeah, Scott is a Treasure Cruise away from really being in the driver's seat.
We're thinking about the draw step. An attack for 1 is going to come across. Pass the turn back. Let's see what Larry Fields can assemble.
Got a fatal push.
Fatal push. That's going to take care of the bird just fine. Don't even need the Bloodtithe Harvester. Now the Bloodtithe Harvester can go to work laying the beat downs. So we talk a lot about who's kind of the aggressor in a given.
That one is, I believe.
Strangle, Strangle, like one of the new removal spells from I believe Crimson Vow is when that one was released. But yeah, we talk about who's the beatdown here, and I think in the main deck games, due to the inevitability that Galvanic Iteration plus Temporal Trespass provides for the Izzet Phoenix deck, that Larry Fields is kind of the onus is on him to get the game over with before that can happen, before suddenly things get extremely out of hand, 2 extra turns happen. You might even just die to a haul of Storm Giants out of nowhere. That maybe shores up in the sideboard games when Graveyard Hate gets added to the mix. But I do think here, at least in game 1, Larry's under a lot of pressure to end this game before Scott can recover from being more or less hellbent here. And Pieces of the Puzzle is certainly the beginning of it.
Yeah, definitely a huge rip there for Scott, able to refuel the hand, and a lot of pressure on Larry here.
Let's see. Day Night, I believe, should have flipped at some point, but a lot of moving back and forth. That's one of the more annoying things with the Day Night. It's tough to track when it no longer matters. As there's the namesake treasure cruise that we were talking about. Big part of the recoup plan for the Izzet Phoenix deck. Thoughtseize, very timely, going to go ahead and take care of that one. Larry Field's probably looking for a 4th mana to escape the Kroxa that has been sitting in the graveyard since turn 2. That one will put the close the door on this game very quickly. As here is, looks like a flashback Galvanic Iteration. And Opt. Not as good as Treasure Cruise, still worth 2 cards.
Stomp. Look like I might have been a Bonecrusher Giant for the turn. Yeah.
Bonecrusher Giant, a nice one. Can play that as a 4/3. Looks like we are going to do that. Going to up the clock a little bit, really showing that Larry's not too concerned about the 2 points. Oh no, Treasure Cruise
Scott
again.
With a huge draw.
Yeah. There you go. There's a look at Treasure Cruise, the banned in Legacy and Modern, the very powerful Delve mechanic. Go ahead and draw 3 cards. Card was compared to Ancestral Recall for rather obvious reasons. 1 mana, draw 3, like we see here, quite literally very similar to Ancestral Recall for Scott Pulera, and just what he was looking for to drag him back into the game. We'll see if it is good enough.
Yeah, looks like Scott's getting back into this one. If Scott's at 13 life, he's actually in pretty good shape here.
Yeah, Larry Field's missing on the land for so long for Kroxa really just gave Scott a lot of time. And now, all of a sudden, despite having 7 damage in a 2-turn clock, it may be too slow.
Yeah, quite good.
Let's see if there's a good draw step. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Not a bad one. But not going to end the game this turn. Fiery Impulse can take care of the Bonecrusher Giant. Do get a little bit of damage for your trouble, thanks to the Bonecrusher Giant trigger. It does reduce the clock a lot with no 4th land for Larry. Just going to go ahead and play the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Add a 2/2 to the mix. Does put lethal on board. A 3/2 and a 3/3. Threatening to end the game next turn. But with all a fresh hand from the Treasure Cruise, for Scott Pulera, I have to imagine he's going to have something to say about that. And Pieces of the Puzzle looks like one of the cards picked up, really beginning to claw his way back.
Yeah, not bad. Not a bad start there.
All right. Untap. Let's see. Thinking pretty heavy. Looks like we're going to start maybe with Pieces of the Puzzle. Reaching for 3 mana. Yeah, Pieces of the Puzzle.
Man, that's a good one.
Trespass among the mix. Arclight Phoenix hit as well. A 1 mana spell and a Trespass. Both, I think, very impressive for Scott Pulera. Let's see if he was looking to bring birds back. Looks like Consider might be here to help him get that done. And if the birds come back, that's blockers for a long time. That's going to buy Scott a lot of turns, even if a Crux is returned.
Oh, yeah. Scott going looking for some birds here.
Well, it looks like the Fiery Impulse is the 3rd spell. That's going to be good enough to bring back a bird. I think there's 2, maybe? No, the other one got exiled, and the other one's a third one is in Scott's hand. So we have a bird to block the Bloodtithe Harvester, and this Fable is going to potentially draw some cards, but I mean, looks like Scott's at least bought themselves another turn, and we know there's a Temporal Trespass that was picked up off the pieces of the puzzle. So, I mean, there's a potential that we could see one, maybe more turns taken for Scott, and that's where things really start to slip away for Larry, is when the extra turns start hitting the stack. Let's see. Thinking about what he wants to discard to Fable, I think. Looks like just a land. That would be a tap land. Not good enough to bring back Kroxa. Let's see if the redraw provides an untapped land.
Culligan's Command? Is that what that is?
Maybe. Culligan's Command, not quite good enough.
Oh, if he makes Scott discard a card, that's...
And you could shock and return Bonecrusher Giant, right? Because that's a shock that could threaten in the game. So you attack for 3. It looks like he did make him discard. Maybe. Yeah, he did make him discard. So the bird does go to the graveyard. I think I would have liked to see a raise that on the Bonecrusher Giant there. Have that extra insurance in case, you do get another turn. Scott has no way to gain life. So the 2 damage from the stomp would be good enough.
It's actually a huge turn for Scott.
Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. The power of the Phoenix deck here is being able to Galvanic Iteration into Temporal Trespass, giving you 2 extra turns. And if, Scott can find a way to bring back the Arclight Phoenixes, it might actually just lock it up, because 2 hits from the Arclight Phoenixes, and that is game.
Oh, Treasure Cruise off the top. I think Scott's going to win it here.
Well, he has an untapped land, I think, so he just activates the Hall of the Storm Giants, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
But he does not. So he's going to Treasure Cruise instead, which is also a fine start. Darn, you can't just win. I have to Treasure Cruise.
Yeah, this is way more entertaining than animating a creature land.
True. It's true. And if you're Larry, it has to feel like this slipped away.
Yeah, and he has an axe, too, to discard that Phoenix that's in hand.
A third Phoenix? Oh. Well, that's pretty good.
That is so good. So.
And that's good enough. 3 spells, that is deterministically lethal.
Yeah. Yeah, Scott takes down game number 1. Man, that was quite a turn. I mean, Treasure Cruise obviously is going to unbury you from some spots like that where you've been discarded with Thoughtseizes and with Kroxa. But Treasure Cruise showing its weight. The Temporal Trespass is that's a real card. I just gotta say that's
still as potent as ever.
So man, just crazy turns. And I thought Larry's turns were pretty good for the most part. He used most of his mana throughout the match and throughout the game. And Scott just said, yeah, well, I'll just draw 3 cards. I'll just filter through my deck if that's cool. And he had a few impulses and stuff to kill what creatures were necessary at the time, and really played pretty well. I thought the Phoenix deck looked really strong there. So we're going to check out the deck list here and see. We'll take a peek at the deck list as the players are shuffling up here. So Larry Field's Rakdos Midrange deck looks quite a bit like Will Kruger's deck. These 4 Lava Coils and Duresses are gonna do some damage here, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I think in the game 1, we saw very much the pressure on Larry Fields to end the game without the inevitability in that game, because you know that the Phoenix deck is going to have access to multiple time walks if you let them just take turn after turn. In the sideboard, things change a lot. There's a lot of cards you can bring in. You care about these Duresses. You care about these Go Blanks. You could even reach for Necromentions for Arclight Phoenix if that's something you want. So there's a lot of different approaches you can take, a lot of cards you can cut. Some of this 1-for-1 spot removal, maybe not as good. And a lot of improvements going to come in, be made here for this Rakdos Midrange deck that really changed the script of how these games are going to play out.
You could make an argument that 12 of these cards should come in from the sideboard. I don't know how many are going to come in, but I mentioned there's only 8 creatures in Scott's deck. So if you hit him with Necromentia, even if you hit both with Necromentia, the game's just over. I mean, there's literally only 8.
Yeah, I mean, the Hall of Storm Giants is the only thing to worry about at that point, but that's not a lot, right?
Yeah, and you'll live dealing with a pair of Hall of Storm Giants, and I mean, it's an interesting push and pull. The Go Blanks are going to be absolutely absurd. I would assume here.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
easily, I think, the most obvious bring in. I think that card's coming in just about no matter what configuration of removal
yeah,
spells, discard spells, and maybe even extraction effects you want is certainly up for debate. But I think all, like you said, there's an argument for up to 12 cards here to change, and that's a lot. So we'll
yeah.
see exactly where he falls there. Take a look at the
Would,
Arclight Phoenix deck. No expressive iterations
yeah,
in this one. Freshly banned.
weird that card's gone. That's good. That's good for Scott. He did not get himself disqualified at the deck registration check.
That would be problematic.
That's a good choice, I think. And there's a few things like there's Aether Gusts and Abrades. There's plenty of good cards going on here, I think, in the Izzet Phoenix deck. Now, I have a question. So if you assume that your opponent is going to bring in, I mean, Lava Coil is one thing. You're going to have to deal with that anyways. But if you assume there's going to be Go Blanks and other exiling effects, is Crackling Drake a card you want to bring in to kind of overload that removal?
That is a slam dunk. I think that is easily the best card in your sideboard for this matchup. Crackling Drake, even if it trades with a Lava
Sure.
Coil, is a 2-for-1 because it draws a card on enter. The Go Blanks, like you said, do clear out the graveyard. You're going to be expecting those, but your Crackling Drake still get the that power boost from the spells that you go through. I think that is easily one of the most appealing things that you can do in the sideboard games. And like you said, maybe provides a little bit of insurance against Necromentia if they try to take this strategy where it's like
Sure.
Necromentia, your threats. Now you have this additional threat, and that requires all 3 Necromentias to cut them off threats. So Crackling Drake, at the very least, I do like some number of like the Spell Pierce effects. I think there's only one there in order to
Okay.
Spell Pierce some Go Blanks on critical turns. But for the most part, Crackling Drake is the card you want.
Okay. Cool. Well, looks pretty good to me. And both players dropped their opening 7s. We'll see what we get to. A lot of these hands, like I've always found in these Izzet Phoenix decks, like a lot of the hands are just like you're like, all right, well I have a couple cantrips, couple lands, like this is just good enough, you know. You kind of keep a smattering of these things that are going to churn through your deck, and it's not you're not really looking for specific things, even in post board games.
Yeah, that's one of the really appeals of a lot of these decks is a lot of the cards are more or less more of the same, right? Like you have lands, you have
Yeah,
cantrips, you have threats. Assemble the right mix. The cantrips help you find the threats. But more or less, like your entire goal with the deck is just kind of move cards around until there's enough stuff in the graveyard that you can assemble your synergies with the Delve cards and your synergies with Arclight Phoenix. And yeah, it looks like a chart, of course, I believe is what that is here on turn 2. No, it's 3 cards. What are you looking at? Is this strategic planning? Is that what this is?
looks like
What is this card?
looks like strategic planning.
I don't even see it in the deck list, so I might just be wrong about what this card is.
All right.
I'm entirely sure. I can't get a great look at what that card is, but I don't know. Maybe somebody in chat can help me out. It looked like it looked at 3 cards. Yeah, it looks like it is strategic
It
planning.
looks like okay.
All right. We'll pass the turn on back. Yeah, it looks like that's exactly what the card is. Strategic planning here as a turn 3 Fable of the Mirror Breaker played by Larry Fields. Going to go ahead and generate a token. And a Fable of the Mirror Breaker for Scott Pulera as well. The one of in the sideboard. Went ahead and brought that one in. Another potential threat. Kind of interesting with Crackling Drake. Can kind of assemble a combination of playing Crackling Drake, then making a hasty token that can immediately attack for a ton of damage. I like that. That's actually a cute little combination they have out of the sideboard.
Okay. Very
And
good.
2-2 for both players. Looks like can't get a great look. We're looking at cards to discard to the second chapter of Fable. This Fable and Mirror Breaker card we've seen a ton of. The rare from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, previously kind of only prevalent in the Winota deck because it generates a non-human that you can attack with and gives you a little bit of filtering that the deck sorely needed. Showing up in a lot of other places,
Sure.
proving itself to be quite a powerful card. What are we looking at? Let's see if there is any interest in removing the token from Scott. It looks like he does. That stomp's going to come down on a token. Tokens removed. Now you're free to get some damage in and start making treasures, which looks to be what we're doing. Kind of a Ragavan effect, able to make a little bit of treasures here in Pioneer.
Yeah.
Tapped castle locked away. No swamps present for Larry Fields.
How about that? Having your 4th land come in tapped, and that's
yeah. When you have 2 black sources that aren't swamps, this is the way we
Yeah.
drew it up. I'm sure.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, well, Scott's hand actually turned out to be pretty good here. Just going to discard a pair of lands off of that, and I think Scott's actually about to start moving through his deck pretty quickly here.
I agree. Consider very good at that. Fable the Mirror Breaker providing some of that action as well. Able to fill up the graveyard. Looks like you said, 2 lands discarded. That's a lot of value for the Phoenix deck. You don't really want those extra lands, and you do really like cards in the graveyard. So able to kind of move through the deck really quick. No Phoenix discarded. Kind of wonder if we drew that one, or if we're holding it around graveyard hate, right? Like that's something that you might want to hold on to so that it doesn't get go blanked out of nowhere. Is here's a Treasure Cruise to go ahead and use what looks to be the entire graveyard.
Yeah, there's not really a worse feeling than like playing a red-black style deck and your opponent just like Treasure Cruise, and you're just at their mercy. Like, well, yeah, I guess you draw 3 cards. I mean, I can't.
Sure,
I can't
you can have your
you,
Ancestral
so
Recall. No problem. No problem.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it.
It feels so bad. Looks like Scott has a red source and picked up a Lightning Axe, which is going to be great with this Phoenix.
Spell number 2. Do we have a third?
I believe that's spell 3, right? It is spell 3. There was a Consider.
What was the first spell? We had a consider. Oh, Consider Treasure Cruise Lightning Axe. That's spell 3. So here comes the bird.
Right.
Once again, no chance for Go Blank to tag that one. It's going to come and immediately attack for 3 damage. And what an impressive use of the graveyard. Like, this is a turn we brought back Phoenix and we Treasure Cruised our entire graveyard away. Just showing how quickly Phoenix can fill the graveyard and then immediately use it as a resource. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, just ridiculous. And it's like, it's a 4th turn and you're already casting 3 spells, drawing 3 cards all in the same turn, and attacking for 3. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, just doing it all. Showcasing the power of Arclight Phoenix, a card that's seen play across multiple formats. We've seen it in Modern for a time alongside Faithless Looting, and a little bit in, Historic, before the banning of things like Historic. Brainstorm. And I believe Faithless Looting was present there as well. Have to do it the hard way with things like Fable, the Mirror Breaker, and Lightning Axe in this format.
Lightning Axe, or Lava Coil does its job there, though. Tags
Lava Coil, able to exile the Phoenix. And cracking the treasure, looks like we have the Bonecrusher Giant as a follow-up. Now, if this land comes on a tap, we could have a hasty Bonecrusher, but it does not. Another tapped castle locked away here on turn 5. And we'll see if there's any further plays. Consider. I'm going to take a look at the top card. Now, like a play that I'm really looking for here, unlike Kiki Jiki, the flip side's not hasty. A lot of complaints about that one, so you can't actually activate it. I apologize. But yeah, Scott Pulera, I have to imagine at this point, looking for a Crackling Drake. Being able to crack in with that one with haste and draw a card is extremely powerful.
Yeah, pretty good stuff.
Hoping to see
got
that
a lot of cards here.
Pieces of the puzzle. Hitting another bird, Crackling Drake among the mix, Treasure Cruise among the mix. Wow, what a pieces of the puzzle. Filling the graveyard and finding Treasure Cruise. She does it all for you.
Yeah, this card's ridiculous. It does just everything you want in a Phoenix deck.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. What looks to be maybe a little bit slow on paper, right? Like 3 mana is not the price you want to pay. But if you look at what just happened there, right? It like put Phoenix in the graveyard, found you a Treasure Cruise, filled your graveyard for the Treasure Cruise. Like it really just solves all of your problems. So you can afford to use some cheap interaction, things like Lightning Axe that even come at card disadvantage, set up a clear board, and then cash a piece of the puzzle. And it just solves the whole deck for you. It's the glue that keeps it together.
Yeah. And Scott has enough for another Treasure Cruise, I believe, which is crazy.
Yeah, just same turn. I mean, you just put 5 cards in the graveyard, and here comes Arclight Phoenix. The Arclight Phoenix just found off pieces.
Gonna leave it back as a blocker, which makes some sense here.
Yeah, you don't probably want to be trading life points quite yet. And if you can trade it for a Bonecrusher Giant
Yeah.
and then just return it on the next turn, that's just about as ideal as it gets.
All right, sounds like this match is going to go to a pause. We might come back to us for a second here. So, okay, so we're going to jump into us here, and then it sounds like we're going to game 3 of match 2. Is that correct? I'm just getting the word in my headphones here. So give us just a second. Okay. Okay, so they're shuffling up for game number 3 in our backup match. Just a brief pause in the main match here, so we'll get that all sorted out and we'll let you know what's going on. But a pretty good game so far. I thought you can see really the power of this Izzet Phoenix deck. It's just able to draw so many cards, filter through its deck, find what it needs at the right time, and that's pretty great. I mean, that's just how you want to build a Magic deck, right?
Definitely. I mean, it's definitely the way I want to build a Magic deck. I love me some
Yeah.
Arclight Phoenixes. I definitely love me some Crackling Drakes. I love the 3 copies of that. I love the potential with Fable the Mirror Breaker. I was dreaming about that all match long. So I really like seeing that deck still having legs post banning of Expressive Iteration. So some cool stuff there. Hopefully we'll see a little bit more of it this weekend. But we have a backup match to check out. That's a little bit of a different flavor as far as I understand.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna jump down there. It sounds like they're basically ready to go. They're shuffling up, so we'll check them out. I don't remember the exact archetypes, but I remember checking them out beforehand. So we'll see what we got going
I think
on
it's a
down there in
mono
just a
red
second.
mirror.
That's right. I think you're right. Yeah, it's honestly kind of shocking that they're still playing right now. We are at 15 minutes left in the round, and they're still playing in a game 3. That's pretty good. So
Well, if
can't
it's
wait to see
anything
what
like some of
that
the red
looks like.
matches of old formats, right? Like it kind of turns into the player on the play is the aggressor. The player on the draw is kind of takes a control role and is using all the removal spells to slow down the opponent who's the aggressor. So it actually does kind of get grindy
Yeah.
because instead of going face, a lot of the player on the draw is trying to use all of their burn spells to fire at creatures. So actually, this matchup, even though it's like, okay, wow, aggro mirror, that'll be done in 4.2 seconds. Instead, it actually it can take quite a long time because there's a lot of 1-for-1 trading on resources.
All right, Drake, I told you this weekend you were going to learn a lot about me. And so now I
All right,
have
which
some more
one?
questions for you. How do you feel about
Okay.
playing a mono red deck in bright red sleeves? And I
Well,
have a follow up also. So you can
okay,
answer that part
all
first.
right. So I play with Matt Red shields, Dragon shields
Okay.
most of the time. So I have to admit that the times I have played mono red decks in tournament settings, I have been the player playing a mono red deck in red sleeves. However, I also played, Delver and Control decks in red sleeves. It's just kind of the sleeves I ended up choosing. So
Okay.
I'm willing to go either way. Either it's good branding or it's accidental. And for me, it would be accidental. That's where I'm at. What do you got?
We're gonna make you make a decision one of these times. You can't play Switzerland all weekend long, right? So that's part 1. So part 2 is how do you feel about showing up to a tournament playing a mono red aggro deck in a Jace the Mind Sculptor hoodie?
Ooh, okay. I'm a little more into
Because you can see
that.
on the left you can see there's a Jace the Mind Sculptor hoodie and with the hood up, of course, because why would you
Obviously, you
not
have to have the hood up.
have
You can't
the
you
hood up?
can't show up with a Jace hoodie and not have the hood up. That's the entire brand. Like, what are we doing here?
You got to Yeah, you got to stay in character. So then you show up and you play mono red. That's pretty good. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm a little more into that for sure. I definitely I like showing up. I'm the kind of guy that wants to show up with a Goblin Guide playmat playing blue white control. I'm really into that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Give me
yeah.
that.
That's where I'm at.
Give me that red sleeves, red deck box, Goblin Guide playmat, turn 1, Temple of Enlightenment, tap, scry trigger.
Looks like James Johnson is gonna mulligan 2 cards down to the bottom here. So unfortunate start for James, and they're on the play too. So they're gonna be behind 3 cards to start here. But Monastery Swiftspear, great spot to start.
Absolutely. Like I said, player on the play, pretty interested in getting some of these early points of damage. Going to come across for 1. Let's see how Alexander's going to respond. Like I said, a lot of times you kind of just want to fire off your shocks, especially main phase in the face of these prowess creatures. If you have a 1 mana spell that deals 2 damage, you're going to fire that off right now. And
Oh, yeah.
instead choosing to get to the board with a Soulscar Mage. Also a fine play on turn 1.
All right, so back to James here. Picked up a Raminap Ruins for the turn. Got a couple lands in hand.
Let's see what he's got on turn 2. Raminap Ruins, another staple of an old format from Standard, banned in its Standard format as well. Kind of innocuous, but extremely powerful. Not a ton of other deserts usually there to sacrifice. Just a nice little free extra 2 damage you get out of your mana base for mostly free. It can matter a lot in these mono red mirrors, but we're going to go ahead and kill our Soulscar Mage, or kill the opponent's Soulscar Mage and get an attack in for 2.
How was Raminap Ruins and Rampaging Ferocidon banned at one point? Come on now.
Well, they printed like a year of just busted red cards, right? Like, what is Hazard the Fervent? That card's messed up.
Oh, yeah.
This is just so free. Like, pay a life, get red mana, so it still taps for red, comes in untapped. And at some point in the game, if you're out of gas, well, check it out. You're dead for my land. Taste it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Zap.
All right.
And here, this is that card that I just never have the name of it. It's extremely potent, and one of these days I'll get it. Kumano Faces.
Kumano. Yeah. That's right. You nailed it. Card is quite good.
Can't agree with you more. And this is a great sequence here. Getting that free point from your enchantment that allows you to use your Skewer the Critics as a removal spell for Monastery Swift Spear, exactly the way Alexander wants the sequence is turned to. Able to get that started and get a threat and answer James's threat.
Yeah, I think that's actually why the card's so busted. It deals that damage, and you can either light up the stage, as you see James doing, or you can Skewer the Critics, and it's pretty solid card there.
I have to agree with you there.
All right, so it sounds like we're resolving the main match, the outcome of the main match here. So they're going to move on to game 3 in the main. We're going to stick it out here on this mono red mirror, and then we'll play game 3 in the main here in just a few minutes. It sounds like we'll jump into that when it's in progress. It sounds like.
Yeah, let's get everything resolved with that. Finish up here. This match looks like it's mono red, so hopefully it won't last too long. There's a stomp. Get a little bit of free 2 points out of that. Light up the stage, the follow-up. Very good follow-up. Both players kind of getting some card advantage to light up the stages. Kind of tough spot for James, though. Can't deploy the Chain Whirler and the Kumano Faces Kakazan from exile from his light up the stage on this turn.
Yeah, a little rough. So I'll give you a quick update, Drake, just so you are aware as well. I just spoke with MaxCon. And so what happened was we saw those strategic plannings hit the graveyard for Scott Pulera. They were listed as chart, of course, in the deck list. So it was just a deck registration error. He's going to go ahead and keep those strategic plannings in place, but will receive a game loss. So that's why we're moving to game 3. So just so everybody knows, make sure check them over beforehand. Check over your deck list. That way you can avoid these kind of issues in the future. So unfortunate for Scott, but he does get to play the deck that he wants to play, which is what he wants to do, obviously.
And he still has a good start nonetheless. So not even out of that match quite yet. So still some good deck building. Forgot to update the deck list. Happens to us all. Hopefully happens to you all only once after you make that mistake once. Hopefully it's one you learn from and don't make again.
Yeah.
I think I have made the mistake exactly once myself.
Yeah.
Looks like we have a Sokenzan entering untapped.
Oh, you just asked about this card. You want to know what this one does?
Hazard the Fervent. Yeah, that card's still messed up in Pioneer. It's messed up in Cube. It's messed up in Pioneer. It's messed up in Standard. Card's just messed up. Love it.
That one's good. Yeah, that one's pretty solid, I'd say. Good luck
Hazard.
this one.
In case you're not familiar, this card's pretty good. 3 in a red, legendary creature, God. Can't have a second one in play. Indestructible haste. Can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. 2 in a red, discard a card, deals 2 damage to each opponent. So empties your hand for you, is a 5/4 that you can't kill, and has haste a lot of the time. Doesn't here. Alexander with 2 cards in hand as we speak. But, on Alexander's next turn, they can play a spell, discard the other card to Hazoret itself, and then make an attack with Hazoret having only 1 card in hand. So card, kind of a weird form of summoning sickness here, but going to threaten to really start turning the tide of this game very quickly as James continues to stumble on lands.
seems totally fine in this red mirror. Unbeatable.
Yeah, pretty good. I
Yes.
mean, basically, Soulscar Mage is one of your
Right.
only ways to even try to interact with it. You have to have that and
Yep.
start throwing burn spells at it, but that's just so many resources to commit. And you get blown out if you
Well,
remove the
Alexander,
Soulscar Mage response. Just such a mirror breaker.
yeah. Alexander's kind of flooding out here. I mean, obviously Hazoret's going to deal some damage, able to pitch extra lands, but it's like he's kind of, he's got 5 mana in play.
That's a lot of mana. I mean, that helps. That deploys. Maybe you just deploy all your cards. You don't even have to pitch any to Hazoret. Here's another
Sure.
Kamado faces Kakazan, going to deal damage. Monster, especially with 2 counters on it, is big. Alexander, life total fairly low. Hazoret can now block if we so choose. We also have this Bonecrusher Giant still on an adventure. A lot of good options here.
That comes slamming in. It's a tight game right now.
Absolutely. And, Hazoret maybe not able to attack these 2 Kumano faces Kakazans. I mean, this is very much what this game's about, right? 5 that we're looking at in play at the moment. 2 are going to become creatures with haste on James's next turn. Might need to just assemble some blockers. That's exactly what's happening here. Bonecrusher Giant going to add to the mix alongside Hazoret.
Yeah, this is a big turn here. Might be James's best shot to get in a little bit of damage that he needs, and
And despite James missing on lands, he's done a good job navigating this game as the aggressor, right? Like, if you look, Alexander's still kind of been on the back foot the entire time. James missing lands means he's got spells, and he has navigated these spells very well.
Yeah. I believe James has a Karizev in hand. So
this is where things get hard. When you're attacking some chump attacks into these huge bodies, this is where things get really difficult. And there's enough damage that Hazoret threatens to output alone that if you tap out, making a non-lethal attack, you might just die on the backswing. A lot to think about here.
Yeah, exactly.
Real lot to think about. Both players sitting back, really pondering this.
Oh, yeah.
State. This is a tough one.
Very
what do you
difficult.
like? Are you attacking here with anything? I'm not sure you can.
It depends. So that looks like the 1 damage. What's it called? Spikefield Hazard, I believe is the name of that card. It's
okay.
So you have 1 more damage. It's just you're only going to get 2 points across here, or 4 points across here, which means 5 out of 4. I don't think
have
it's
some spells can maybe live. So big. Karizev added to the mix.
I think you just have to wait here. Yeah, as awful as it sounds, you're at 12, so like I mean, you could make some blocks. It stinks, but
yeah, and you have some life total to work with, right? So like Alexander can't really get too frisky with the big creatures here because otherwise, you're threatening a huge crackback. So it's kind of just this holding pattern that one player is really looking to break open with some removal spells.
Now that's a beat.
Bonecrusher Giant certainly begins to do that, able to pick off one of James's threats and represent a threat on its own. And another 4-3 is not what James wanted to see on the opponent's side. Oh, sorry. 5-4, thanks to the Kamano faces Kakazan, is not what James wanted to see.
Yeah, that one's a beating. I was going to say, if I'm Alexander here, I'm trying to shut the game out. And obviously Hazoret lets that happen.
Yeah, Hazoret's one of those cards that if you're in a holding pattern, Hazoret is the trump card on the table, right? And that's probably why we see it present in Alexander's deck list here in the Cyborg games. It's expensive. You'd think the games might not go long enough, but they definitely do, as we're seeing here. 1 card in Alexander's hand, and every draw step you give Hazoret represents at least 2 damage, right? Because at the very least, even if you draw a land, you can pitch it to the Hazoret, deal 2 additional damage. So if the game's just taking draw steps, Hazoret is going to be a good one. And Hazoret coming in with Indestructible means it also kind of represents the Abyss. Just turn after turn, able to attack. You can't make any profitable blocks.
Exactly. You have 2 turns left, and let's see what James has picked up for the turn. There's a Soulscar Mage. I mean, we needed that.
That's
like
step 1. Maybe too late here with 2 Bonecrusher Giants. James being only on 2 lands this entire game. Math is for blockers, says James. We're attacking with everybody.
Just turns them all sideways.
All right, Matt. What you got? What's your take on the Mensa card as the Ragavan?
high IQ. Is that a high IQ card? Is that what that is? Is that what that's?
I
Is that
think
what that
that's what that
stands for?
is.
There we go. That's what
Oh, we got
I like. Our
Ragavan.
table spotter fixes it. God bless.
Fair enough. Well, there's an actual Ragavan. Well, not a 1-mana Ragavan, a 0-mana Ragavan that
Yeah.
loses all of its abilities. A little bit worse.
That card's fine. Yeah, that card's fine. Let's put that in the. Let's put that one
quite
in
a bit,
instead.
quite a bit better. Without Karizev is Ragavan. Did not need
Alexander
the human.
just doing some checking. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is this 6? This is only 6 damage, right? Because he has Spikefield Hazard, which is 1
1,
point of damage.
3, 4,
Knocks to 8.
5.
It pumps up the Swift Spear.
It'd be 7, right? With a 1 Spikefield hazard. There's 3,
Yeah.
4. Oh no, you're right.
Yeah,
It'd be
just not
6. That's not enough.
So-
We're gonna need more.
so-
And James
Yeah.
Johnson gonna pick it up. Hazard the Fervent looking incredibly impressive.
Yeah, Hazard was the mirror breaker there for sure. Just able to play offense and defense a little bit. It lets you do the thing where you just gum the board up with a bunch of blockers, and you're at 9 or 12 life, and you say, all right, well, we're just gonna sit here like this. I'm gonna draw a card. I'm gonna shock you every turn. Or you get to the point where your opponent bricks or doesn't have enough lands to keep up with you, and you can start attacking and abyssing, like you said, and pretty well navigated. I think both players did the best with what they could, and that looks like a decent deck.
Yeah, Mono Red looking extremely potent. Once again, another deck that didn't get hit with the banning at all. So we can take a look at the our old favorites, a little bit of Arclight Phoenix and Rakdos. Very, very different flavor of Magic from the Mono Red mirror. We'll take a look at game 3 there and see where they're at.
All right, got a pair of Ledger Shredders in play. Getting ready to connive. Oh, that's a good one to put in the graveyard.
Yeah, this Ledger Shredder card, I hear it's pretty good at putting Phoenix in the graveyard. Grows the Ledger Shredder, draws you a card. That's a pretty impressive interaction. This is Fiery Impulse going to take care of what appeared to be a Graveyard Trespasser. Get a little look at our bird friend that I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of from New Capenna.
So it looks like Larry actually had some of his better cards to match up too. There's a Trespasser there, as well as a Go Blank, and still 2 Ledger Shredders in play, which is pretty difficult stuff.
Yeah, I mean, post Go Blank, given how big the graveyard is, and I don't see any cards in exile, I kind of wonder if that Go Blank maybe got tagged with some flavor of counterspell. Otherwise, I mean, either way, these Ledger Shredders, with 2 of them, you threaten to fill the graveyard up even after a Go Blank so fast.
Oh, yeah. Larry discarded a pair of cards, and I think drew 2 lands off of that off that saga.
And not really what the doctor ordered. We do have a Hive of the Eye Tyrant, I think is what the full name of that card is. The black
this one is,
creature land.
Yeah, Hive of the Eye Tyrant. You nailed it. So becomes a 3/3.
That's a card, and it's going to come in. That one has Menace. Can exile cards from the graveyard as well.
Yep. All right, Scott gonna untap.
Let's see what Scott can assemble. A lot of real estate over there for Larry Fields. Not a lot of action.
Man. Taps 4 mana. Larry Fields knows he has Crackling Drake now.
Oh, yeah. Crackling Drake. More threats is not what Larry wants to see. Already a little bit behind with 2 evasive threats in the form of Ledger Shredders. Crackling Drake, I'm sure that thing is huge.
Yeah, I believe that card when it touches the table, when it hits the table, I believe it makes a thudding noise too when it hits the table. So.
like on Magic Arena where you have the footprint.
Yeah, it's actually the noise I think it makes when it hits the battlefield.
It is. Actually, they use my sound bites in Arena. I don't know if you knew that about me.
Oh, that's good. You're getting paid royalties, I hope. Otherwise, I negotiate for you. So, Larry, couple lands and a Bonecrusher Giant. Not going to do it against the ginormous Crackling Drake and the aerial assault that Scott put together there. So good game for Scott. And sideboard plan worked out kind of how they wanted. You and I talked about it beforehand. Crackling Drake's going to be a big one. It literally hits the battlefield and the game ends on the spot. Just overloading the threats, the too many threats overloads the removal, and just how we drew it up.
I've heard the card described 4 mana, suspend 1, win the game. That's exactly what it was there in that match. And like you said, an impressive showing from both Ledger Shredder and Crackling Drake. Good to see those cards back in action without expressive iteration.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of cool because you get to see the power still of this blue-red Phoenix deck even without the 4 of expressive iteration. So still very playable, obviously. It didn't look like it was like super oppressive or anything like that. It's just a magic
It's
deck,
powerful.
and yeah, it's a powerful deck, and it's obviously you can attack it in different ways. So it's good that it still exists, in my opinion.